You mentioned that you watched Eric Weinstein and Stephen Wolfram videos, so why don't you comment on them?
Oh, okay. Well, of the two, I found Wolfram's to be the most interesting to me. Um, Weinstein basically has found a geometry that, at least in his own mind and the mind of a few people who are close to him, explains of a lot of things. And that's not particularly surprising, but it's not necessarily new news either, in as much as given that this is a virtual reality, then the reality is computed, which means it in large extent is math-based. Okay, the rule set that allowed this virtual reality to evolve is math-based. It's basically deterministic for the most part, and with some probability and randomness thrown in for those things that are probabilistic, like radioactive decay. It's a natural thing. It just happens to be a random process. So if you have a reality that's generated by math, then you ought to be able to find geometries and other math that kind of look like they are explaining the reality, as Einstein did with his space-time. It doesn't mean that those things are fundamental. It doesn't mean that there is this fundamental space-time out there that's warped. It just means that he's found some mathematics that provides answers that match pretty well with measurements, right? So it's not so much that it's a thing as it is a model. It's a model that we use, but don't confuse the model with reality. The model of reality is different. So he's come up now, Einstein, it seems, with some other geometry. Of course, we don't really know because no paper's ever been published. It's never been formalized. It's kind of his insider friends know somewhat about it, and he does, but it's still an unpublished work, which in the science world, that means it doesn't really exist yet. It's just kind of the ramblings of an individual. Until he gets it published, it's not real science. But assuming he does have something, and he is a smart guy, and he knows his math perhaps, then he probably does have something there that will work. But again, not surprising. It's a math-based reality. It's computed in a computer. So it's probably going to have, and it is a probabilistic computation for the most part, based on a deterministic rule set. So that's okay. Maybe he has something, maybe he doesn't, hasn't been published, but not unexpected.
Has My Big Toe, Your Big Toe, been published, at least the theory of everything part of it, not the more, well, any of it?
Yeah, no, what's been published is the books you're reading. Those 3 books have been published. Other than that, there's 1,000 hours of video on YouTube, but as far as papers go, there's just been one paper that's published in a peer review physics journal, and that's the one that describes this research that I'm having done. I told you about at Pomona by Cal Poly. Okay, so first I wrote the paper and got it peer reviewed and
By
put
Pauli? His last name is Pauli?
No. It's Cal Poly is what they call the school. It's California
Okay.
Polytech.
I see. I was like, that's
Cal
the
Poly. Yeah.
same exclusion principle.
Yeah, not a poly, but a poly, a Poly. Anyway, so there's not really a lot to say about Weinstein because it's more hearsay than anything else. It's secondhand, third-hand hearsay, but not all that surprising. Now, Wolfram has a better idea, and that's that he's looking at it from the computing side of things, which it is a computed reality. So you should again expect some of what he has, to match. If you look at simulations, there's a lot of common things about them. So again, it's not too hard to find something that matches pretty well. But his version seems to be very complicated. It's a very complicated process, and reality, if you are trying to explain fundamental reality, then a good process should be simple and elegant. It shouldn't be real complicated. If it's very complicated, it's probably not fundamental. It's probably something else. That's basically Occam's razor, and it's been a general principle of physics forever. The things that are simple, straightforward, and elegant are fundamental things. Yes, you can have a lot of logical, what do we call it? Logical consequences that run off into details, no doubt. But the fundamental things are simple. He's awfully complex with what he does, and I guess I probably wouldn't have this opinion except that Brian Whitworth, a fellow in New Zealand, has also published a sort of a toe from the computer side, as opposed from the analytic math side, like Weinstein, the computer side, process side of things. And his is a lot simpler. And he also, it's a lot more elegant and it's a lot simpler. And he also does the same thing. He derives, space, mass, the quantum particles, why they have 2/3 spin, or why, whatever. He derives a lot of constants in the standard model, and why the standard model is the way it is.
When did that come out?
Oh, that's been out for some years. It's you have to Google him. He published it in a peer-reviewed paper, but I don't think it was primarily a physics journal. So there's probably
I see.
There's probably fewer people that have heard about it. But it's a more elegant, kind of similar approach.
Are there any other theories of everything that you find interesting, like Brian's?
No, Brian's is probably the most. Well, yeah, two of them. There's two that are very interesting. One's Brian's.
And last name of Brian, one more time for me, if you don't mind.
Whitworth.
Okay.
Brian Whitworth. If you Google him, you'll probably dig him up, and you'll see he explains light. And he starts with the thing that he calls a Planck process. So he's a math guy, but he's also an IT guy. So he's looking at computer processing. Okay,
yeah, that's fine. Maybe I can speak to him.
His Planck process is a fundamental thing. So anyway, so it's just his idea. The other people who are doing interesting work is a group called Quantum Gravity, centered in about 20 miles north of Los Angeles. And if you research if you just put quantum gravity research on the Google, you'll get them. And the guy who runs that is Clee Irwin.
Oh, right.
Klee,
okay.
Clee Irwin.
Yeah.
He runs the quantum gravity, and he's got a bunch of physicists and some math people there, and they've been there for 5 or 10 years now. And Clee's the financier who pays all the bills. So he's been working on this, and they've put some really nice videos together that if you want to get a good overview of it, he has some really good professionally done videos that kind of explain where he's going with. Also, it's a geometry. I mean, he starts with E8, which is a kind of a shadow of a lattice, if you like, and he works from there. Now, both of these guys, Whitworth and Clee, they are trying to explain just what we call physical reality. They're not trying to explain the bigger picture. They're not trying to explain the subjective. They only want to explain the objective world. So
do they have an account of consciousness or no?
Well, they do. Both of them talk about consciousness, but it's kind of a hand-waving thing. Both of them would say that consciousness is fundamental, and that their process is supportive of consciousness being, a fundamental thing. So I think they would both say that, and they both, consciousness is part of their thing, but it's not really what they're about. What they're really about isn't so much consciousness. They just realize that consciousness is a thing that, if you're going to have a Tao, you need to explain consciousness, so consciousness is there, but it's not the core thing of their work. The core thing of their work is to explain this physical universe. You see, so again, if all you're trying to do is try to join quantum mechanics and relativity, maybe I should call that a tiny Tao. And what they're doing is looking at the whole physical reality, the whole physical universe. So maybe that's just a little Tao. And then mine is basically, the objective and the subjective, and consciousness is at the core, is the source, and so on. So then from my viewpoint, that's the big Tao, because it also talks about people's experiences and explains those sorts of things, which neither one of their models attempts to do. So both of them started out on a idea to really derive physics, derive physics from, for Whitworth, from a computer processing viewpoint. And I'd say he's much simpler and much more elegant. And that's why I like his better. But now, are any of these fundamentally correct? Well, they're models, and models are judged not by how correct they are. Models are judged by how many answers they can produce. There is no, this model's the truth and this model's false. It's models provide answers. And if they can answer, if they can derive all the facts that we know of, then they're good models. And if they can
falsifiable predictions.
Yeah, right. And falsifiable predictions, then they're good models. So it doesn't matter whether they're different or strange or bizarre or whatever. It just matters, how do they perform?
For some of the science types who are listening, and now probably it's about 3.5 hours into this. What is a falsifiable prediction or set of predictions that your big Tao has?
Oh, well, it has quite a few. On the non-physical side, or on the information side, the subjective side, then it's all experimental, but by individuals and by groups of individuals. The same way you would say that medicine has, viability. That medicine has truths in it. It's the same thing. Well, you give somebody a pill and their headache goes away. Does that mean that pill took the headache away? No. Maybe the headache went away anyway. You need to do statistics, and you need to do probability, and then you need to show significance of those statistics before you can say that you've found something that looks like a fact. So it's a different thing than what they call the hard sciences. So when you're doing things that have to do with people, you have to look at your proof in terms of statistics and probabilities and significance levels. Okay, so if you or anybody else follows the MBT ideas about what's important to life, what our purpose is here, why we're here, and so on, you will find the results. As you let go of that fear, you will find your life changing. Your relationships will change. All sorts of things will change. Well, that's verifiable evidence to you. So yes, there's a lot of verifiable evidence there, but it's individual, because we're talking about a subjective world. So it's individual to persons. Now you can look at 100 persons that do that and see, do 50% or 90% or 100% all find similar, facts. And then you can come up to a bigger, an ensemble that your statistics can talk about. But it starts with the individuals. Over on the physics side, on the objective side, well, yeah, I'm doing a set of, quantum mechanics experiments now that are just as, just like any other quantum mechanics experiments. You set up the experiments, you look at the particles to see what happens, and you're either right or you're wrong. You are able to predict it or you won't. So the physics that I'm doing has a couple of experiments that will do things that have never been done before. It'll show us a piece of reality that nobody's really seen before. In other words, people for the last 100 years have been coming up with cleverer and cleverer quantum mechanics experiments to show, the weird science of quantum mechanics. Well, the ones I'm coming up with are just like that too. They're going to show the weird science. And that weird science has a good explanation of why it has to work that way. And like I said before, it'll offer evidence. And we always talk about evidence. We don't talk about proof in science. Last time we talked about proof in science was when we came up with Newton's laws. And then we found out those laws weren't laws after all. So now we talk about theory, because we realize that we don't know what the future will bring, what kind of insights and understandings that will bring.
As you know, on Theories of Everything, we delve into some of the most reality-spiraling concepts, from theoretical physics and consciousness to AI and emerging technologies. To stay informed in an ever-evolving landscape, I see The Economist as a wellspring of insightful analysis and in-depth reporting on the various topics we explore here and beyond. The Economist's commitment to rigorous journalism means you get a clear picture of the world's most significant developments, whether it's in scientific innovation or the shifting tectonic plates of global politics. The Economist provides comprehensive coverage that goes beyond the headlines. What sets The Economist apart is their ability to make complex issues accessible and engaging, much like we strive to do in this podcast. If you're passionate about expanding your knowledge and gaining a deeper understanding of the forces that shape our world, then I highly recommend subscribing to The Economist. It's an investment into intellectual growth, one that you won't regret. As a listener of TOE, you get a special 20% off discount. Now you can enjoy The Economist and all it has to offer for less. Head over to their website, www.economist.com/TOE, T-O-E, to get started. Thanks for tuning in, and now back to our explorations of the mysteries of the universe.